Welcome and thank you for joining us live at your table today. Before we get started with our discussion on managing financial anxiety during a pandemic presented by Restaurants Care, we would like to share some housekeeping items to keep in mind. All audience members are in listen-only mode, which means you are muted. We will be monitoring audience engagement on the dashboard and do encourage you to participate by using the question pane. There will be time for questions at the end of the presentation. Please note this webinar is being recorded and will be available online in the coming week. Now, without further delay, let me introduce Alicia Harshfield, who is the Executive Director with the California Restaurant Association Foundation and Restaurants Care. Thank you so much, Alicia, for being with us today. I'm going to let you take it away.
Good morning, Patricia, and thank you for including Restaurants Care. We are really honored to be bringing this topic to you all, and thank you for joining us this morning. We know that these are very scary and unpredictable times, and many of you have had to make tough decisions, and worrying about how to get by financially can be overwhelming. Our experts this morning will share insights on the economic outlook, provide practical advice and tools for coping, and connect you to resources to help you weather this storm. Restaurants Care is proud to bring this to you. We are an emergency relief granting program for restaurant employees facing crisis. And as you can imagine, during this pandemic, we have been, our services have been in need greatly, and we've helped with direct relief grants to restaurant workers and their families, a little over 1,100 people. So you can find more resources through Restaurants Care at our website, which is restaurantscare.org. So this morning, we are honored to have United Health Group as a sponsor, allowing us to bring some panelists together and present this information for you. So I'd like to thank and welcome Alia Shida from United Health Group, and she's going to share for you a couple of really important resources that are available to you and your employees. So Alia, welcome and thank you for supporting this important webinar.
Thank you, Alicia. I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you all for joining us today. United Health Group is really proud to sponsor these mental health webinars with the foundation. And we're proud to partner with both the California Restaurant Association and state restaurant associations across the country, offering exclusive programs and solutions that are available to you just for being a member. Those include discounts on health insurance. We've got a virtual medicine option and at-home testing kits that are all available and listed on the CRA website. United Healthcare, through this partnership, really prioritizes mental health, and that will continue to be a priority for us moving forward. One of the things that we've made available on the CRA website is a list of free and low-cost solutions that are available right now to help you and your employees through this very, very stressful time. So I hope that you all look on the website and take advantage of some of these resources that are out there and available right now.
Great. Thank you, Alia. And to find some of those resources, you can go to calrest.org or to restaurantscare.org. And then following this webinar, we will be sending out links and information so that you have all of the tools you need that are discussed during this conversation. So thanks again, Alia and United Health Group, for bringing us all together. So let me tell you who's on the webinar and our panelists today. We have Sean Lucas, who is a wealth management advisor from Merrill Lynch. And we have Tiffany Locket, a district manager and vice president with Wells Fargo. And Dr. Monica Roots, who is the chief medical officer for Sanbello. So we'll be starting with Dr. Roots and have her share some information to sort of set the tone for our discussion today. So Dr. Roots, thank you for joining us, and I'll turn the mic over to you.
Thanks so much. As we have talked about, we are in unique times. Let's just face it. Stress has never been something that hasn't been part of our lives. And let's talk about stress, because stress is not necessarily inherently a bad thing. Stress actually gives us drive and momentum to continue to improve our lives. Yet, stress has been at an all-time high for quite some time. So based on polls, 80% of us may actually have pathological stress on a daily basis. Where does that come from? Well, the workplace is something that has always been somewhat stressful. There are extended hours. It may affect relationships. There have, of course, been the 24-hour news cycle where we are constantly bombarded with new information, and it's really difficult to turn it off. In fact, think about what the internet has done. Previously, if we wanted to know about a subject, we would go to the library and maybe check out a book or two. But now you Google a subject and there's hundreds of thousands of hits potentially that you can read about. And there's just no way of keeping up with all of that information. And then, of course, there's social media. It can be a really good thing, but it also leads us to feel like we are comparing ourselves to others. You know, sometimes I take maybe 20 pictures before I post one on social media, and my life probably looks like a highlight reel. But, you know, sometimes it's not reality. And then, of course, there are events that are beyond our control, like COVID-19, financial stressors in the economy, as well as racial tensions in the political environment. So as we add COVID on top of that, what does that mean? It's meant changing life routines. It's meant restaurants taking a pause and really changing what their business plan and business functions work. It has led to decision fatigue, in which every little thing we do now has a pro and a con that we have to weigh to it. They're changing family routines. I don't know about some of you, but my kids are being homeschooled right now as we're speaking. And so things are just inherently very different. And then we think about the industry where we are having individuals who we have to put a pause in terms of working. We are changing how we're delivering food to many. Are we going to go back anytime soon to normal restaurant industry where people are able to come? All of these things are questions right now, and it's no wonder we're all feeling emotionally fatigued. That's why webinars like this are so important, so we can talk about coping skills. But let me hand it back over to you.
Yes, thank you. That is really a great landscape and sort of understanding for us that it's okay to feel this stress, and it's understandable and normal. And so we hope that through this conversation, we'll be able to provide you with some additional resources to help you get through that. And so to sort of understand the economic outlook and what's happening in the United States and the world, we've brought in Sean with you again, is with Merrill Lynch. And Sean, thank you for joining us. If you'd like to share a summary and sort of outlook according to Merrill Lynch, we appreciate your information. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Alicia. It's great to be here and help support Restaurant Cares and California Restaurant Association. Obviously, this COVID thing is very unique. We just experienced the worst economic decline since World War II. And conversely, we've also had the biggest response from the federal government with regards to monetary and fiscal stimulus since World War II. So we are fighting a war, both literally and figuratively. But this has been very stressful, obviously. And to tie into what Dr. Roots was saying, when it comes to financial matters, your brain can actually cause you to do the wrong thing. So, I've been told that, your frontal cortex is part of logic and understanding, and it's what gets us through day to day. What do we wear? How do we drive to work? Very simple decisions. But there's a part of your brain called the amygdala, which is more of a reflexive, very responsive to short-term emotions. And when we have a crisis similar to COVID or the great financial crisis or 9/11, that kicks in. And so it's part of our survival mechanism. But when it comes to making financial decisions, it could actually lead you to make illogical, poorly timed decisions. And so we always want to be aware of that. We're only human. And so how can we get through this stressful period of time and make good financial decisions? Well, one way is you always want to have a plan. You always want to be sitting down, looking at your business plan, and jot down in an emotionally neutral environment, what do you need to do, and have contingency plans. So if this happens, I'll do this. This happens, I'll do that. And that helps you when things get crazy. You can go back to something that you planned out in a very neutral moment, because that's why we did all those fire drills in school. You want to have some sort of muscle memory on what do you need to do when there's an emergency. So with regards to the economy today, we definitely look a lot better than we did 4 or 5 months ago. And the more time that the more time that we have, the more clear the future looks. So in February, March, we had a very big decline. The government came out with unprecedented stimulus. And if you look at the markets today, the financial markets, be it stock and bond markets, we are at all new highs. So we have now erased the 34% decline in the stock market that happened in February and March, and we are at all-time highs. Many people are wondering, how can that be? When I look around, I'm only, halfway open. The economy's in shambles. How can that be? The one thing that people need to remember is that the stock market and the economy are two different planes. And if you're looking to the market and looking at your surroundings, they're not going to be on the same plane. So that's number one. We also have to be mindful of data points versus trends. So what a data point would be is, for example, we are seeing the data, the trend in COVID cases is actually falling in the United States. But we've most recently had a spike, and we would call that a data point. So you are going to have, whether it's unemployment, jobless claims, you are going to have data points that pop up periodically. And it can concern people, think, oh no, the economy's slipping again. But what we really want to focus on are what are the trends. So the good news is that the trends on COVID cases are falling. That is good. It does not mean that we will not have hotspots or data points that shoot up. The trend with the economy is positive. I know it's hard to believe, but that is what the markets are forecasting out. And one of the primary drivers of that is the unprecedented financial stimulus within the United States and around the world. So we have in our midst right now, we have the entire globe. All economic indicators are pointing up. They're all being fueled by massive stimulus from their central banks and governments. And this is not going to end anytime soon. It makes what the government did during the 2008-2009 crisis look very small. But that it's not going to be even. It's going to be bumpy. So we've had a nice recovery. Unemployment's right around 10%. By the end of the year, we think that unemployment can get down to about 8%. But 2021, 2022, to get from 8% down to pre-COVID levels of unemployment, 4 or 5%, it's going to be a grind. And so I use that word specifically because that's what it will feel like. It'll be a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month, just working it out. But the way we're looking at the market is that the worst is behind us. We had the deepest recession ever, but it was also one of the shortest recessions. So one of the things that's also helped pulling us out of the abyss, not just government stimulus, is the housing market. The housing market has been very strong. COVID has actually accelerated this. If you can imagine that people were used to going into offices and working from home, now people are sheltering in place. They have their makeshift offices in their homes. They're homeschooling kids. Maybe that apartment in New York City isn't quite the best place to be. So you're seeing people flee big cities. You're seeing them buy bigger homes. And housing, believe it or not, is the biggest driver of job growth. It hits a lot of different sectors. And so when people's homes are appreciating, their confidence goes up, they feel better financially, they go out, they spend money. And that's what we're seeing. This morning I saw that trends in dining has trended up about an extra 3% from last week. But again, we're still down about 55% year over year. So your industry has actually been one of the hardest hit and the most difficult to revive at this point. The bottom line is, I do believe that we are going to get through this. The timing of it is what's always difficult. The more states that reopen and we get back to business as usual, the faster we all get back to whatever the new normal is. But what I'd like to leave you with is that as far as the economy goes, the government is doing everything it can to continue to stimulate the markets and stimulate the economy. The low interest rate environment is not going to go away anytime soon. That is going to help business owners refinance their debt and borrow money to scale up as we get through this crisis. A couple tools that came out that's unique to this COVID situation for any business owners out there or individuals that are working with companies with 401k plans. There was something called the CARES Act that was announced in March, and the CARES Act is allowing people to access their money a little bit more freely. One of the most advantageous aspects of this CARES Act is the ability to borrow up to $100,000 from your 401k plan without any taxes or penalties. Now, this is something that you can do for the year 2020. It's up to $100,000 or 100% of your vested account balance. So if you have $25,000 in a 401k plan, you can take out the full $25,000 up to $100,000. And that is without any taxes or penalties. And you have the ability to pay that money back over the next 3 years. You do not have to pay it back, but if you don't pay it back, you will have to pay income taxes on that distribution. And it could be paid out over 3 years. So you don't have to take that financial hit all in 1 year. But the hope would be, retirement planning is a long-term plan. 401ks are meant for retirement. So we always advise people, if you have other sources of money or liquidity, please look at your retirement plan as the last bucket to go to. It has to be a true emergency. But if you do take a distribution, understand that you can put that money back within the next 3 years, and it's as if you didn't take it. No taxes, no penalties, and so you're basically allowed to borrow money from yourself. There will be some other resources that will follow up with an email about some online resources that can help people with budgeting and all sorts of other financial questions that you may have. Alicia, back to you.
Thank you, Sean. I'd just like to follow up on one thing you said in the very beginning before we go to Tiffany. And you mentioned having a plan and developing that plan when things are calm and you have a moment and it's neutral time to sort of think things through. What if you don't have a plan and now we're in the middle of a crisis? Is it too late to make a plan? And what would be the number one thing you would say to think about?
No, it's never too late to make a plan. Whether we all know it, we're all acting in certain ways, and you're creating plans on the fly. And so, I think the first thing to do is, again, get yourself in a very solid situation emotionally and just calm and sit down and think of what's the problem that's right in front of me. Because it's very overwhelming with all the things going on, that most of which we cannot control. What can you control? You can control your emotions. You can control what you do and how you react to certain events. So you need to sit down and look at what is my most prominent problem at the door right now. Solve that problem. Then when that problem's solved, you go to the next problem. And then as you solve problems and you keep moving forward, you build emotional momentum. And so it's very easy to get overwhelmed by just everything going on. You need to start small and focus on what's right in front of you, what has to be done right now, even if that is something as simple as making the bed. Just do something, act purposely, and just take each day as it comes. But sit down, and it's always good to talk to other restaurateurs, other business people. Everybody's in the same boat, and everybody has the same fears, the same concerns. Maybe they won't voice it, but be the voice. Ask the questions, and answers will come.
Great. Thank you, Sean. And remember, all of you participating in this webinar this morning, we do have the chat open for you to submit questions, and we'll have some time at the end of everyone's presentation to get to your questions as well. So thanks again, Sean. We appreciate that outlook. And we'll now turn to Tiffany Locket with Wells Fargo. So you'll be hearing Tiffany's voice rather than seeing her picture at the moment. But Tiffany, we'd like to hand it over to you now.
All right, thank you, Alicia, and good morning, everyone. And we are so honored to be here to support all of you today in Restaurants Care. What I'm going to be talking about today is tips for handling finances, during a crisis. And thank you, Sean, for really teeing up the topics that I'm going to talk about today, because the financial impacts of a global pandemic such as 19 are far-reaching. While we take the necessary steps to put our health and safety first for ourselves and our family, it's also important that we also take steps to protect our finances. Banks and other services have reduced in-person access, hours of operations, as we've all experienced, to ensure that the environment is safe for everyone. So it's important to be open-minded and think about new approaches to managing your finances during these uncertain times. So I want to share with you six tips that may help with the adjustments. So the first one is make the most of online banking. Managing finances online or through mobile banking, are easy and safe ways for you to conduct your day-to-day banking. And many banks have expanded some of those online capabilities to do your banking and are actively working on that to expand those. Using these tools can really help you see where you stand and to plan for the road ahead, all from the safety of your home. The second thing is take a moment to review budget and savings. So consider tightening budget to ensure you have enough funds to cover the essential expenses. So if you have less money coming in, really prioritizing spending and eliminating any unnecessary expenses. Looking at the full picture really helps you create a budget, and sticking to it at all times is really important. And if you receive a tax refund or other type of incoming non-regular income, consider allocating a portion of that to boost the savings and create that emergency fund for the unexpected situations that could lie ahead. The third thing is when you have payments, make them on time. So during trying times, really think long-term when it comes to credit. Though it's difficult, try to at least make the minimum debt payments by the due date. Going over the 30 days or more overdue can really impact your credit for up to 7 years, and 35% of your credit score is based on payment history. So therefore, while higher credit balances can also reduce your credit score, the impact may be easier to address over time than a missed payment. And many banks today allow you access to your credit score online. So take advantage of this feature to monitor your score during this time. The fourth thing is use credit wisely. So if you do carry balances or borrow more, make a list of your current credit sources. So this includes your current balances, your credit limits, and your annual percentage rates. Really important to note the end date if you take advantage of any of those 0% introductory rates, so you know when that time is coming. You'll want to avoid maxing out any one card. So spread your spending across several cards and use credit lines with the lowest annual percentage rates first to maximize any interest that you're going to pay to save you some money. And I would say, beware of payday or car title loans. Quick cash offers can be tempting, but it could also lead to debt spirals. So as Sean mentioned, you know, that emotional decision that we can make, especially during unprecedented times, we really just want to take a moment, pause, and really look at what are some of the benefits, what are some of the risks in making those decisions. The fifth one is contact your lender and service provider. So if you are finding it challenging, contact them. Financial institutions today have, you know, hardship options, enabling you to pay for short-term payment suspension or possibly deferring or reducing your payments. And then the sixth and last thing is guard against fraud. Unfortunately, even during unprecedented times and unknowns, we have to watch out for scammers because that is on the rise. The Federal Trade Commission and other agencies warn consumers, they warn us every day about the scammers exploiting the crisis. So be suspicious, you know, when you claim things from creditors, you know, or even charities. Be cautious of responding to emails or phone calls that are things that you may not normally receive, just to be mindful to not be a victim of that fraud. And so though the coronavirus pandemic is changing on how we do things day to day, including how we manage our financial you know, situation, if you need general information or navigate directly to trustworthy sites such as the CDC website and other resources to follow from our webinar today. So thank you so much for your time. Alicia, back over to you.
Thank you, Tiffany. And I have one follow-up question for you. With regards to payments and not missing a payment, is it better to pay something versus nothing when you're trying to contact vendors to look into any deferral options? Or if you found that you've fallen behind on a payment, is there something that someone should do? Like, is there a step to take to try to improve that scenario?
Yes, and a lot of lenders today and banks are more lenient in options that they have. So they will negotiate in experiences that I've heard and seen. So paying something will help. You know, again, if you think of the credit score, it looks at the payment history, you know, 35% of it being weighted on that. So when it shows effort of something, that will help.
Great, thank you very much. Thanks, Tiffany, for that great information. And again, we'll be back as a group with more questions through the chat if you'd like to submit something. And now we're going to turn this over to Dr. Roots to hear some more about some tools and things that we can do to help us emotionally cope during this difficult time. Thank you, Dr. Roots.
Thanks, Alicia. So today I'm going to talk about some really specific techniques. So think about your mental well-being like a cup that's filled with coffee. So when we have anxiety and stress and negative thoughts, it's actually draining the coffee out of your coffee cup. Like there's a hole in the bottom of it. So I'm going to talk about tips to kind of eliminate the draining that's happening. And then I'm going to talk about resiliency tips. It's a way of filling your positivity cup. And remember that if your cup's not filled, you can't really stop and help other people because you're running on empty. So let's talk about that for a minute in terms of stopping the drain. So anxiety really causes this negative thinking pattern. It causes us to have catastrophic thinking, like black and white thinking, and the worst can happen. That leads us to avoiding situations or becoming paralyzed with fear. And that leads us to becoming more anxious about the situation. That becomes a negative loop to continue to perpetuate the cycle of anxiety. So how do we stop that? We really need to change the way that we're thinking. So I'm going to teach you 3 ways of doing that. One is called thought reframing. The other one is called playing the script. And the last is thought stopping. So the first is thought reframing. It's a way of really getting yourself unstuck when your negative thinking is putting you into a spiral. I want you to ask yourselves these 4 questions. Am I confusing a thought with a fact? Am I jumping to conclusions? Am I assuming my point of view is the only one possible? And what are the advantages and disadvantages of thinking this way? That's a way of reframing that negative thought. The next idea is called playing the script. So this is a way of using visualization to realize that the outcomes that you're worried about maybe aren't that bad. So ask yourself these 3 questions. What's the situation I'm worried about? If that situation were to happen, what would that lead to? And if that situation were not to happen, what would that lead to? Consider that the next time that you're worried about a negative outcome. But then sometimes that doesn't work. So I want you to try thought stopping. Literally say out loud, no anxiety. Say it, call it something. Sometimes I call my anxiety Bob. I say, no, Bob, stop. It's a way of externalizing that anxiety, taking it out of your mind and realizing that it's a thought. It's not who you are. It's not your feeling. It's a thought, and that can stop. Also, maybe consider closing your eyes and visualizing a big red stop sign. Tell yourself, how many sides does it have? What does it look like? What would it look like on the side of a road? Literally stop the thought. And then, of course, always remind yourself that a thought is just that. It's a thought. It's not a fact. And then let's talk about resiliency, ways to build that. I want you to focus on the 3 C's: control, challenge, and commitment. So first of all, what can you control? You can control your exposure to media. Set a 10-minute timer every day, and that's the only time you allow yourself to go on to social media or go on to a news program and update yourself on what's happening that day. Trust me, if you don't read it today, it'll be there tomorrow. The next thing that you control is your health. Sleep well, eat nutritious food, make sure that you're exercising 30 minutes a day. This has all been linked to resiliency. And then control your environment. If there's a lot of clutter, that also creates thought clutter. Try to tidy up a bit. Maybe put some plants in your home. That actually leads to positivity. Control what's around you to promote well-being, not to drain you. Next is challenge. Challenge those negative thoughts like we talked about. Question your mindset. And what have you learned that's new during this time? There may be really positive things that come out of this. And then commitment. What do you care about? What can you attach meaning to and go after? And commit to helping others and learning something new. And then lastly, I'm going to leave you with the idea of a savoring walk. This is a meditation practice that allows us to focus on the moment and appreciate it. Now, there are different ways of doing this. There is guided imagery that we can do where we literally close our eyes or remember a place that we have been that brought us calm. Being in that moment and feeling perhaps the sand under your feet, hearing the waves crashing if you're at the beach, or remembering what the mountain or the forest sounded like if you were going on a walk. There's also meditations. In the Sanbello app, we have those, but there are many apps out there with meditations to help you, not just in moments of anxiety, but focusing on how your body feels or how to fall asleep. But then there's a savoring walk. Now, this is something that you can do by yourself or with someone else. And really try to do this outdoors if you can, but if not, you can always imagine it. And what this does is it helps you focus on the moment and inspires feelings of gratitude and appreciation for that moment right here, right now. This is how you do it. And if you want to do it with a person, this is how you probably should think about doing it. Pick your favorite person, a family member, a friend, anyone. You're going to take that walk with that friend, or at least imagine it. On the first half of your walk, I want you to savor the past experiences with that friend, that family member, or whoever you selected. Saturate yourselves in the beautiful feelings about that person or what that favorite event is that you did together. Maybe the conversations you had, the travels you had, whatever it can be, bring up those wonderful past memories. On the second half of your walk, I want you to actively anticipate savoring something in the future. What will that future look like? What will you do with that person to really have a great new memory to create with them? Really embrace this feeling of gratitude for that person and the ability to make those memories, not just in past, but in the future. Savoring occurs when we deliberately try to enhance the positive or prolong a good experience. I invite you to try these things. So not just draining your cup of positivity, but trying to fill it. The last idea that I want to leave you with is gratitude journaling. Now, many say journaling just feels like another thing I have to do today. So I'm going to tell you how to do it and do it quickly. Pick one time out of the day. I even encourage you to take out your phone or your calendar and schedule a meeting with yourself. I want you to schedule that meeting for yourself. We frequently schedule meetings for others. Why can't you do it for yourself? Take out a piece of paper, an app, whatever you want to do, and I want you to write down 3 things that you're grateful for that day. Be specific. Maybe it's, I'm really grateful for when I get to have a dance party with my child. It fills me with joy. Or I am so grateful I'm able to have the skills I have and create a meal, not just for myself or other people. That brings me a feeling of peace. Be very specific. And then once a week, take a moment and look back at your entries over the previous 7 days. Feelings of gratitude is not just linked to feelings of mental health, but it also decreases your blood pressure. And guess what? It boosts your immune system. I invite you to try these coping skills at this time of stress, and I hope that it helps you. Thanks so much. Back over to you, Alicia.
Thank you, Dr. Roots. Yes, it's, I think, even more important than ever to try to remember to find that time. I keep hearing people talk about self-care and the importance of that during this very stressful time. And I admit it's hard for me to remember to take a little moment for myself, but even when it's just slowing down to drink my coffee in the morning, to have those moments, right, to catch your breath and to reflect, can set the tone for the day as well. So thanks for that, those tips and strategies. So I'd like to open the floor up for some questions, and I do have a couple to get things started. So I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the financial resources that business owners have been able to take advantage of during this crisis. One being the PPP. And so Tiffany, I'm thinking this might be a question to start with you, but do you have some advice or strategies for those who have received the PPP and perhaps they're now looking at preparing their report? Maybe they've been a California restaurant that has opened and then had to close and maybe partially reopen again, and how do they make sure that they are filing appropriately, and any advice for those who have received the PPP while the reporting's coming due?
Yes, thank you, Alicia, for that question. So, I would say the first thing to do is to take a moment and look at everything holistically in terms of, what's important in this moment in time for them, and what are they trying to accomplish. Oddly enough, it's asking the questions that Dr. Roots just mentioned in that thought stop, and really thinking of what it is that they want to accomplish, and what resources do they have with those PPP resources. And we found that some businesses will apply them to see what can they control, how can they continue business in today's environment. This past weekend, me and my family went to a restaurant and we ate outdoors. We're seeing that happen a lot. So it really just depends on what is important to you as that owner and what you want to accomplish. How can you expand and grow in our current environment? What are the resources in terms of, people that you need to allocate those, as appropriate? And we found in some cases, some have given some of the funds back, whereas others have kept it because of the unknowns of the additional phases that are to come. And there's a variety of resources that are available for eligible expenses and loan forgiveness application processes within the PPP funds that we've seen.
Yeah, so I guess at this point it's really important to connect with your banker. Is that one of the things? Or if you have a financial, like an accountant or someone, are there any free resources if you don't have a CPA that can help you with some of those filings and making sure you're maximizing your PPP?
Yes, on the PPP website, there are some options for customers to use, which I'd be happy to send out following this webinar.
Okay, great. Thank you. And if someone did not receive the PPP, are there any other programs or resources? And I'll start with Tiffany, but Sean, you might have some as well to throw in. Programs or resources that business owners can take advantage of to help them manage their financial outlook.
With the second round ending as of August 8th for PPP, there are none that I am aware of at this time. I would defer to Sean for that if he's aware of any other alternatives.
Yeah, at this time I'm not.
Okay. And then let's see, Sean, based on the economic outlook, what should people be doing to better their position financially? Is there any sort of, I mean, looking at, if I had an opportunity to make some financial decisions for my future, are there some things that I should be monitoring or considering, whether it's certain types of investments or other programs that I might want to evaluate?
Sure. Well, you know, obviously it depends on what type of situation somebody's in. If you're in survival mode right now, you know, it's all about, there will always be opportunities in the investment world, so don't think that you're missing out. You just need to survive this battle and win the war. So if, to Tiffany's point, you know, if you are having trouble with cash flow and you're just trying to keep the lights on, then you just go and you pay minimum payments on everything, try to keep current on everything, and you prioritize what's the most important thing. You're only paying for essentials. Don't worry about saving up for your emergency fund. Nothing discretionary is going out. You're just about essentials. And then as you get through that and continue to move forward, then you can start tackling things like saving up for emergency funds, things of that nature. If you are more liquid and this is stressing you but not killing you, then certainly you can look to continue to look at the markets for financial opportunities. I will tell you that Merrill Lynch is a believer that we are in the beginning stages of a long-term up market for stocks, and we would look at any pullbacks in the market as an opportunity to buy. So, you know, we do have a situation here where the market's done very well. We have a big election coming up in the next couple months. It is completely normal for this time of the year. You know, markets have seasons, believe it or not. It would be completely normal for that market to start coming down again. And again, I wouldn't want people to panic or think that this is, oh my gosh, it's all over, we're going back down again. It is a data point. It is one of those things that happen. So if the market does come down, we would encourage investors to continue to buy high quality investments. And I would stick with high quality because, again, we've never gone through a crisis like this before. We've had pandemics in the past, but they've never shut down an economy. So there is no precedent for what we're going through. So again, just take care of what you need to take care of. Get through this battle. As you get through this battle and things mend, that's when you sit down again and say, okay, if I went into this crisis a little unprepared, what's the next step? Talk to financial advisors, talk to CPAs, and build your plan for the next crisis, because there will be one. We just don't know when it will be or what shape it will take. But you will look at this as a learning situation in that, you know, we're all going to learn things out of this environment, and that will provide us better tools for the next situation.
Yeah, so true. Thank you very much. And then for those that are participating in the webinar who have employees that are certainly feeling the stress, whether they've been furloughed or they have fewer hours, they're financially strapped as well. Are there any advice for the employers on the line of how they can coach their employees through this this financial crisis as well. Maybe we'll start with Tiffany, and then Sean and Dr. Roots, if you have anything you'd like to add to that. But again, the focus being on how can an employer advise or coach or direct their employees to resources available to them.
Yeah, and that's tough, you know, because employees, you know, team members, it's like family, right? And so it's got to be one of the most difficult decisions to have that, you know, conversation. You know, I would just say, referring back to the 6 tips mentioned that will be out following this webinar in handling your finances during a crisis, and just echoing as Sean mentioned, you know, is tightening the budget to cover, you know, the essentials. And what does that look like now? Where can they cut back? And really laying everything out to see, you know, what do I want versus what do I need? What can I, you know, eliminate at this current time to take care of those things that we need that are essential, make those adjustments until we recover and can bring those things back.
Thank you. Sean, anything to add there?
I think Tiffany summed it up really well. Again, especially, you know, if you're a younger person, it's a very challenging time, but this is not forever. And, you know, somebody once told me that your biggest crises are sometimes where you learn the most and make the biggest advances in your life. And so it's easy to say, but it's very difficult to live through. But again, I think that you just want to continue to focus on where you want to go. Don't focus on what you fear, because then you're going to hit that. Focus on what you need to do, where you want to go. And as Dr. Roots mentioned, just staying positive, even though it's dark, just continue to focus and persevere.
Thank you. And Dr. Roots, anything for employers to share with their employees to help them through this, their own personal financial crises?
Yeah, I think connection. That's the one thing that keeps coming to mind to me. And a connection could simply be a text message saying, "How are you doing?" Mm-hmm. You know, just a text message so people feel heard and seen, even at a time of stress, can really go a long way. It might seem small, but it can make a huge difference. And so that, I think, is one way that having that time for connection and community amongst your own folks, I think is really, really important to keep in mind.
Yeah, thank you. So true. And I think that dovetails nicely into just the overall wellness of our community, is remembering to stay connected. And thank you for your time, Sean, Tiffany, and Dr. Roots, for participating and sharing your expertise here on this morning's webinar. And for those of you participating, we will be sending out a follow-up email that'll list all of the resources provided by our panelists. We'll also include information on Restaurants Care, our emergency fund for restaurant workers facing a crisis, and which also includes links to additional resources from other nonprofit services, where perhaps getting food banks, utility relief, and other financial assistance for perhaps your employees. Would like to let you know that on September 11th, we will be hosting another wellness webinar. It is on suicide prevention and substance use. So another critical topic. And we know that, again, these days are extremely stressful and exacerbating sometimes depression, and the feelings of isolation can make things a little more difficult to get through. So we'll be addressing that topic, and with some really important resources. So we welcome you, and watch for information on that again September 11th. And with that, I'd like to thank United Health Group again for making it possible for us to be here. Thank you to all of our panelists. Thank you all for tuning in this morning. I hope we provided some valuable resources for you, and that you stay strong. And if I know anything about the restaurant industry, we are just incredibly innovative and strong people. And I know that we'll weather this storm, and that we'll come out better in the end. But we're with you, and we are offering resources for you. We are thinking of you, and we hope that we all get through this with great learnings and future successes. So thank you very much again for joining us. And for more information, watch for your email or go to restaurantscare.org. Thank you.
Thank you.